Welcome everybody to the Broncos franchise. I'm Monkey C, and today we are going to have an exciting episode to kick this series off with the off season. If you're wondering why I'm doing the Broncos franchise, I let the CPU dictate who I would be managing based off whichever coach was fired. And if you haven't already, please check out my intro video where Sean Payton was fired in a shocking one and done again in Denver. And on top of that, we will enter this offseason with Russell Wilson retiring, which opens up all kinds of possibilities financially. And we will definitely need it with the way this roster is structured so far, which resulted in an 8-9 season. But the stats show a team that was very underproductive. There's a lot of work to be done with this team, and it's going to take some more time to rebuild. And I'm sure that's not what the Broncos community wants to hear. But we need to rebuild that winning culture that once existed in this organization. We'll need to find some foundational pieces and bringing in guys who's won before and becoming influential pieces to our current and future young core players. To start off, we'll have to look at the roster, and the biggest question is what are we going to be doing at quarterback? And there's almost no chance that Jarrett Stidham is going to be our starting quarterback going into next year. However, when we look into this auto-generated class, there's only one quarterback and he's projected to go top 5. There's traits that I like about Demarius Browning from Fresno State, but his lack of athleticism and C awareness makes him very one-dimensional. And it's going to be a huge question mark if he's going to be able to improvise whenever a play breaks down. So with that, I highly doubt I will be trading up in the draft to go and get him. But if he falls, there's a chance that we would consider a talent like his. And our roster is not well constructed enough where a rookie quarterback can thrive. Beyond the quarterback position, the roster definitely needs some reconstructing. Before addressing this year's offseason, I'm already considering what I'm going to be doing with some guys whose contracts are up next year. The first guy I want to address, and we definitely are trading this offseason, is Jerry Jeudy. We know who Jerry Jeudy is at this point in his career, and I won't be fleecing the CPU for a high draft picks for him. So I may be getting some day 3 picks at best for him back. The other guy whose contract is up next year, but also just doesn't really fit what we are trying to do at the running back position, and that's Javonte Williams. Williams is a good running back, but what I'm looking for is more flexibility at that position to really catch the ball out of the backfield. For me, trading Williams makes sense since he doesn't really fit our scheme, and we know we're not going to extend him. So there's possibilities that Javonte Williams will not be a Bronco next year. The last guy might upset the Broncos community, and that's Baron Browning. So in this series, to make it more interesting, if a player has red or lower interest bar like Baron Browning here, I'm not going to pursue them in free agency. If they're on the roster, they are making it clear they won't return and asking for a trade. So Baron Browning in this series has asked to be traded. We tried everything to make it work, but his motivation to play close to home outweighs anything that we can offer him here in Denver. So to start off this off-season, we will need to hire a new staff because the previous guys were fired along with Sean Payton. Our new offensive coordinator, I would like a quarterback guru and someone who is invested in developing the offensive line. And Bob Bates certainly has that in his repertoire, so we are signing Bob Bates as our new offensive coordinator, and he will fit our scheme as well if we opt for the vertical zone run, which is how our playbook is going to be designed. For our defensive coach, our disguised 3-4 defense will be blitzing a ton and playing tons of man coverage as well, so finding someone who focuses on the defensive line is crucial to our defense. I would also need someone who focuses on zone coverage, since I will be upgrading man coverage a lot more for our corners. And Jackson Pierce has exactly what we're looking for, and he also has a specialty in full blitz, which would make him our new defensive coordinator for the Broncos. The next thing that we need to address is deciding who we want back and who we want to let go in this re-signing period. Patrick Surtain is a decision of whether we want to pick up the 5th-year option or not. I'm going to say no because I think we can extend him to a long-term deal next year and keep him as a Bronco for a very long time. I have yet to dive into the draft class to see if the center position is good. So the safer way to go about this is to secure the guys that we know that can play. So we'll extend Cushenberry to a 2-year extension. And beyond that, I don't think there's anyone else on this list that's going to return for the Broncos, and we wish them the best of luck wherever they go. We have a little over $50 million to work with, but I think we want to still make more cap room, so I'm going to cut off some dead weight off this team. First guy I'm going to cut is Samaje Perine. He had some good opportunities vulturing some touchdowns from Javonte Williams, but in this moment, he'll save us $3 million when we cut him. Another guy that would save us a ton of money is cutting DJ Jones, and he would save us $10 million. It clearly didn't work in the front lines with him in there. We'll also let go of Justin Simmons, who's regressing and would save us over $14 million. It's tough losing a player like this, but it's for the betterment of the team going forward. And after all those moves, we now have $84.4 million in cap space. And this would be a good time to check out mock draft number 3. And from the looks of this draft, there's a lot of offensive linemen, so I'm already excited to see how many and which ones we are going to choose. But at the same time, the projected top 5 quarterback has fallen out of the first round. I don't even see him here. If teams don't value him, there's a chance that I won't either, but it's still early and we'll see who's in free agency as well. Now we enter free agency and it's officially here, and we'll look at who's available and interested. Josh Allen is the best free agent available, followed by L'Jarius Sneed, Justin Simmons, Amari Cooper, and some other receivers. If you're new to the channel, I made some strict rules on interest level motivations for myself. So if anyone with red or lower interest bars, I won't attempt to sign them. And with that, there's not a lot of interest in guys coming to Denver this year. The first place we need to address is the quarterback position. And out of all the free agents, Jameis Winston has interest in us, and I think I had a feeling all along in this offseason that he was going to be our guy. So I will offer a 2-year deal to Jameis Winston to be our starting quarterback next year, pending on the draft. Another interesting signing would be Mike Dana. One, we'd steal him from the Chiefs, and secondly, this actually opens up trading Baron Browning. Since he doesn't want to be here, it might be the move to make to begin replacing him. So, the first wave of free agency, I'm going after Michael Pierce for our terrible run defense last year, Mike Dana, Raheem Mostert for speed and his catching ability in the backfield, Terrell Burgess for his speed and depth at safety, and Jameis Winston. And after the first evaluation, all but Mike Dana has made a decision, and we have signed the other 4. Michael Pierce, Raheem Mostert, Terrell Burgess, and Jameis Winston. Welcome to the Denver Broncos. There's a high chance once again that Jameis Winston is our starting quarterback. I know the carousel sucks, but we are building for the future, and we are all about the redemption story for the former number 1 pick. Now that Mostert has signed with us, I think it's time to trade Javonte Williams. Williams was below 1,000 yards this past year. He has an injury history, and he no longer fits the scheme with this contract being up as well. So we have traded Javonte Williams to the Carolina Panthers for a 4th round pick this year. Back to free agency, we needed more receiving depth, and Kendrick Bourne was the only receiver that was interested, so we offered a 1-year deal. We also upped our offer to Mike Dana for 2 years, offered to Levi Wallace to be our second corner, Greg Gaines to build up that defensive front, and Albert O to return back to Denver. And in the second wave, 3 out of the 5 made a decision. We have signed Levi Wallace, Greg Gaines, and Albert O to become Broncos next year. Kendrick Bourne and Mike Dana are really the only two free agents left that I would love to join us. So in our third evaluation, Kendrick Bourne now also is a Bronco. I'm also giving just very short years, like 1 or 2 year deals, and bringing in guys to really set the culture and direction for our team. Speaking of culture, we have another trade. The writing was on the wall after adding Kendrick Bourne for more depth in the receiving room. We just know that Jerry Jeudy isn't our guy moving forward. So we have sent him to the New York Giants for 2 fifth-round picks, one this year and one next. As we get closer to the end of free agency, Mock Draft 4 is now out. And Demarius Browning is now projected to go 6th to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We would really have to love him in order for us to pay a lot to get him. And I'm not sure we love him that much. Encouraging news as we enter the last parts of free agency is that Mike Dana has decided to sign with us. And this officially opens up Baron Browning's trade request to be granted. I was searching for a second round pick and Atlanta was the only one that was close to biting. But they wanted just a bit more, so we added a 5th round pick to seal the deal. Baron Browning is now an Atlanta Falcon, and we may take an edge rusher in this draft. To wrap up free agency, I wanted a little bit more depth at the off-ball linebacker position, so I gave a 1-year deal to Devin Bush, and he also will join the Broncos. At the end of free agency, I just wanted to see where some guys went. I don't want to go through all of them, that would take too much time, but here's a glimpse. Now let's check out some divisional moves. And as expected, the Chargers didn't do much based off their cap situation. The Chiefs also didn't do much. In fact, their best signing was Kyle Van Noy during the free agency period. Raiders, on the other hand, were very, very busy. Christian Fulton is now one of their new corners. They also stole Willie Gay from the Chiefs to upgrade at linebacker with Jerome Baker. And speaking of Baker, their new franchise quarterback is Baker Mayfield. This year is going to be interesting for sure in our division. Also, another trade has been made. Aleem McNeil is traded to the Packers for Dontavian Wicks and late round picks. So I took some time to look through this draft class. This is a very weak quarterback class. I even considered trading up for Demarius Browning, but my concerns are more about his athleticism, making him very one-dimensional. And the other issue I have is his awareness being at a C. He could have hidden development and could be a great quarterback one day, but we cannot take that kind of chance trading all the way to get him and we're not fully in love with him. The running backs, I wanted someone who could catch the ball out of the backfield, but unfortunately most of these running backs are power backs. I did, however, have interest in Jonathan Curry at one point and making him a focused player, but he's clearly not a 3-down back with C to D short route running and catching. Wide receiver is very interesting. There's a lot of big guys in this class, but they are really, really slow. And the majority of them are like 23. I also don't normally draft 23-year-olds. Everyone has their non-negotiables, and that's mine. And the receivers that are fast have terrible route running and releases. But if we needed to take one, it would be Carson Leonard. He's 6'3", 216 pounds out of Michigan State and just 21 years old. He's not fast, but he's very explosive, being the first in vertical jumps with 42.2 inches and first in bench press. He's also a good route runner with really good hands, so this could be someone that we could consider. At tight end, there is a top 5 guy, but we won't be investing in trading up to get him since he's going to go earlier than we expected. And the rest of the group is okay at best, so we could consider one maybe in the 3rd or 4th round. The best part of this draft class, in my opinion, is the offensive line. DeMarcus Preston is currently projected to go first overall. He looks good, but I'm not necessarily sure that I would invest a first overall pick on him, but I could be wrong. The left tackle class is just too small for my liking, but there is some true potential at the guard positions. My favorite of the bunch is Gio Sapp, and in my opinion, he is the best prospect in this class. He's 21 years old out of Miami at 6'5", 318 pounds. He ran a 4.99 in his pro day and had the most bench press out of the entire offensive line class. And I want to make him a Bronco for sure at the end of this draft. He has good enough size to play both guard and center. The center class is average after my evaluation, and at right tackle there are some good ones. We won't be able to get these top right tackles, but we could take a flyer on these two second-round talents in Carlos Williams and Luke Fender. Luke Fender is 22 years old out of Oklahoma at 6'7", 314 pounds. He's an okay athlete, but he has really good pass protector traits with all A's. And then Carlos Williams is 21 out of USC. He's also 6'7", but at a massive 334 pounds. I think he could be a solid tackle that we can develop with raw traits. They could be solid options for us in the late second round or early third round. Defensively, there wasn't good enough talent to consider. Those who are good are gonna be gone by the time we pick, and then the talent drops dramatically. So we may consider some late round guys at defensive end and defensive tackles. At the linebacker position, the edge rushers were not astounding as well. Middle linebackers could have potential, but we'll see. But my favorite linebacker slash edge rusher could be available if we trade back. And I'd like to take Nate Gills. He's 21 years old out of Michigan at 6'3", 260 pounds. He's a really good athlete with finesse moves. In my thought process, there's never enough pass rushers, and we could use one after trading Baron Browning away. At corners, it's extremely top heavy, and this is the first time ever I've seen a cornerback run 4.24. But unfortunately, most of these guys are going to be gone by the time we pick. The one guy that could be in our range is Trey Hatchett. But do we take a corner or do we trade back? The safeties are also very underwhelming in this class, except for one, and that's Glenn Barton. He's a very good athlete, but I just wish he had better man coverage with the scheme that we play. So we'll get into the draft, and I currently have 77 players that I favorited, and excited to see who we'll pick. And I have a feeling that we're gonna do this through the trenches. One other rule that I made is that I'm only allowed to trade up and down once. Since the CPUs don't trade in this game, I think it's just more fair to limit ourselves, but also it just keeps it fun. And now, the 2024 draft is open, and the Raiders are on the clock. And they select offensive lineman DeMarcus Preston. I believe he's going to be good, I just wouldn't have invested a first overall pick on him. Next, the Chicago Bears go with Tremaine Collins, the first pass rusher off the board. Rams on the clock select Jaleel Dent. He ran 4.25 in his pro day, but I'm shocked they went that direction when they could have gone Telvin Gooden, who ran 4.24. Saints are on the clock and they select Trevor Feldman. Offensive lineman again, and the quarterback is dropping. Last I checked, in the mock draft, he was projected to go 6th to the Bucks. And I tried to see what the value was to trade up with the Cardinals, and it certainly wasn't worth all of this. Cardinals will select and they take Tavares Greenwood, another offensive tackle, off the board. Bucks pick and they take quarterback Demarius Browning out of Fresno State, and we'll see what he looks like right after the draft. Patriots select Kerry Scott, another pass rusher. Commanders take Amari Merle, who we know is a top 5 player in this class. I didn't consider him because I was hesitant the fact that he had F injury. Giants go with Caleb Norris, a defensive tackle. Vikings go Dante Logan, another receiver to add to their stacked group, and that corner is now falling off the board. I took a look at Gooden again. He looks good, so I'm shocked he's falling. I wanted to see if the Bengals would do business with this pick, but they were asking for way too much to move up to 3 spots. So we'll pass, and they take Andrew Hinton, offensive tackle. I also tried to see if the Cardinals would do business, but the asking price was way too much as well, and the Cardinals end up taking Telvin Gooden, who I believe is going to be a top 5 player in this class as well. Titans on the clock before us, and they take Cameron Nixon. Now at our pick, I wanted to see our options, and with the board the way it is, it won't hurt to consider trading out and gaining some more draft capital. There were some intriguing offers, but not any that was mind-blowing, which isn't surprising when you're the 14th overall pick. There is a player that I'd like to take in the first round, so I don't want to trade out of the first round. So I decided to take the Colts deal and move back 5 spots for next year's 4th round pick and an extra 7th round pick this year. So that will be the only trade down that we do in this draft. And the Colts select Niles Ellison, a tight end out of Georgia. Chargers take Trey Hatchett, who I considered if we stayed in that spot. Jaguars take another corner in Leonard Bridges. Niners select right tackle Vernon Selvey. And the Steelers take Terrence Sheffield, the safety. Now at our pick, I'm really thinking about building through the trenches. I considered Gio Sapp, but it feels way too early to take him. So I'm going to consider a pass rusher. And Nate Gills out of Michigan, it looks really good. So with our first pick for the Broncos, we take Nate Gills. And he's got hidden development. And an exciting start to kick us off. Hopefully we can develop him to be a dominant edge rusher for our team and building for the future. Jumping to the second round, the Vikings pick a tight end now in Charlie Nugent. I really want my next pick to be Gio Sapp, and we'll need to trade up to go up and get him. We are in the back end of the second round, so I'm going to see if he drops a few more picks. We've tried to trade with the Bengals earlier, but their asking price is just way too high, so we'll have to wait. And that absolutely breaks our hearts as Gio Sapp gets taken by the Bengals. That was my guy, and now we'll need to pivot to a new direction. And maybe we should have just pulled the trigger on trading up. That was the best player in this class, in my opinion. The receivers were also on my board, but I just don't think that I'm going to trade up to go and get them, as one of them goes to the Niners in Richard Barrington. And directly after that, Carson Leonard is heading to the Steelers. So we have an interesting decision with our next pick. I still wanted to build up front, and Carlos Williams is someone I'm very interested in developing. I thought about Luke Fender as well, but ultimately the size of Carlos Williams makes him our pick right here. He's also got hidden development, and he's hopefully a huge part in building for our future offensive line. He's not Gio Sapp, but he will be a good player as well. We had a quick turnaround picking 4th in the 3rd round, and the Rams take a center in Richard Russell. And for us, this would be a good time to take a corner here in Carl Barrington. He's got good size and a very good athlete, and I love the fact that he has A for tackling. So he could possibly play safety, nickel, or even outside. So we are drafting Carl Barrington. He's got normal development, but I'm sure he's going to be a very nice player for us. We were picking late in the 4th round, so I wanted to move up. So I moved up with the Eagles, and a pick swap was involved. So in the 4th round, I wanted to focus more on the defensive side of the ball, and so Glenn Ramsey is very athletic and has some good traits. So we take Glenn Ramsey to build up our defensive front. And he too has hidden development, and we've done very well with 3 out of 4 picks being hidden development players. We are rebuilding this team the right way so far. Later on in the 4th round, I wanted a receiving back, and Gregory Sullivan really fits that mold. So we picked Gregory Sullivan to be added to our backfield. In the 5th round, I just started to think about finding Jameis Winston his backup, and Dylan Brackett was a good enough player with traits to consider him, so he'll be our guy. In the 6th round, I thought about taking a random shot and looked at Lester Banks, who ran 4.24, but he isn't really good at anything else other than straight line speed, so probably not taking him here. I looked around and I think we'll just keep building our defensive line to add more depth. Here is Rashad Ferguson in the 6th round. In the 7th round, I accidentally skipped over my pick, but Brandon Glover was one of my guys on my favorite board, so hopefully he's good. We have 2 more picks in the 7th round, and this one is from the Colts pick earlier, and taking a receiver here will be a nice add to our depth chart. Kendrick Whitworth also ran 4.24, but has some traits we can work with. So we'll pick him here, and we found ourselves a 7th round hidden development receiver. We've had a very nice draft. And we rounded out the draft by taking Tavares Miller, linebacker, to potentially play on special teams. And that was our draft. Let's see how we did. I'd say we did pretty well for ourselves. Nate Gills is a 74 overall with hidden development and a very nice addition to our edge rushing group. I'm very excited to see how he'll play out in our defense. Our 2nd round pick after losing out on Gio Sapp is Carlos Williams. I'm going to transition him over to left guard for now, but he's a very raw prospect that will need some work to develop. But being hidden development with some nice traits to start off, he could be very good for us in the future. I knew going into this draft that we needed an identity to build up front. But we also considered the secondary as well when we took Carl Barrington in the 3rd round. He's already a 74 overall, he's got some good size to play inside and out. His tackling is a 72, so we could actually potentially move him up to safety if we wanted to. He's very versatile, which makes him a very fun prospect to watch this year. In the 4th round, we found ourselves the steal of the draft in Glenn Ramsey. He'll be one of our defensive ends in this defense based on his size. He's incredibly athletic and brings some extra juice to our aging and weak defensive line. Gregory Sullivan is a lower overall than expected, but could potentially see some playing time as our 3rd down back. Dylan Brackett was brought in to be our backup, so that's nice depth. He's got a pretty decent arm to work with as well, and has some pretty good traits to be a backup. Rashad Ferguson might be a miss, and we'll see if he ends up making the team this year, or he could just be a nice backup if he plays well in preseason. In the 7th round, I accidentally skipped my pick, but we did well with the pick. Brandon Glover was on my favorites board, and looks like it might have worked out for us. He's still very raw in talent, but we'll need to see how we can give him some more playing time. We now have a good amount of edge rushers on this defense. Another exciting 7th round pick is Kendrick Whitworth. Also hidden development, he ran 4.24 and is a solid deep threat for our offense with 97 speed. Not bad, and we'll see how we can work him into our offense as well. The last player that we selected was Tavares Miller to add more depth to our linebacker group, but he'll also need to prove that he belongs on the team in preseason. I'll also change the faces of these players when I'm done with this video and numbers as well. So let's see how the rest of the class did. Jaleel Dent went 3rd overall and he's an 80 overall, along with Amari Merle and Telvin Gooden, who we almost traded up for. Wow, a fullback in the 7th round is a 79 overall, and he goes to our division rival Chargers. Jason Bayer is a top 5 player as well with a 78 overall. This was a pretty good draft class. Oh man, Gio Sapp was a top 10 player, and 1 overall away from being a top 5 player. I'm gonna be sick. Unfortunately, he got away, and I found out that he also has superstar development too. Major loss in this offseason episode. The questions were at the quarterback position in this class, and it was okay. It wasn't as terrible as I thought. Demarius Browning turns out to be a 74 overall with star development, so that's a nice add for the Bucs. But Dante Mitchell was taken by the Packers, and he's a 72 overall who also has star development. So it was really just 2 guys in this class, but overall I'm still glad that we didn't make that trade. Receivers that we liked in this class were Carson Leonard, who's a 74 overall, and turns out he's just normal development. And Richard Barrington is a 73 overall with star development. So I'm okay with us missing out on them. I think we did well by finding our hidden dev development in the 7th round. This guard class was absolutely gold in this draft, with basically majority of them being either mid to high 70s. Also, Charlie Dunn was a shocking pick because turns out he has superstar X Factor. That's a huge miss on my end when we had a shot to take him in the 1st round. And of course, missing out on my favorite player, Gio Sapp, as mentioned before, who also has superstar development. But hopefully Carlos Williams works out for us, but this guard class was something else. But that's a very nice haul for us in this year's draft class, and I'm excited to see how this will all play out this upcoming year. We might have moved the needle in the right direction with Nate Gills, Glenn Ramsey, and Carl Barrington being our building blocks for our defense. We also might have something with the young speedster Kendrick Whitworth that could help Jameis Winston this year. And of course Carlos Williams to begin building through the trenches. I went through the preseason and I'm going to sign the star development rookie in Seth Cunningham to be our kicker. And Lester Banks, who ran a 4.24, is in free agency. And turns out he's a superstar development player who will sign. It also turns out that he might be a better running back than receiver, so we might have found ourselves a receiving running back all along. He'll need some work, but he's got some raw athletic talents to make something out of this, and our offense may have gotten just more explosive, but we'll wait and see. I also wanted to see what the schedule is going to look like this upcoming year, and we will open up against the Raiders and their number 1 overall pick, DeMarcus Preston, and former number 1 pick, Baker Mayfield. And then we have the Ravens and Bengals, which will be a tough stretch, Cardinals in week 4, some divisional games in week 5 and 6, Titans and Falcons in week 7 and 8 before our bye week, then the Raiders, Steelers, Chargers, Panthers, Browns, and Saints on the road. Chiefs in week 16, and we'll see the rookie Demarius Browning in week 17 at home. That should be a fun one. And closing it out against the Jets. The season's gonna be exciting and it's a pretty rough schedule, but I think we have enough heart to step up to the challenge. And to cap it off, here's what the week 1 roster looks like after cuts I made in preseason. It also helps when watching CPU versus CPU to see what numbers they're wearing so you can evaluate them as well. And you can also let me know what you see on the field. Our quarterback room is Jameis Winston and Dylan Brackett. I cut Jarrett Stidham to save us another $5 million, and we'll just roll with 2 quarterbacks for now. Running back room is going to be led by Raheem Mostert, and Lester Banks is going to be my 3rd down back. Receiving room will have a lot of guys that will try and prove who's the number 2 receiver. I'll start the young guys in the beginning of the season, but if the production isn't there, I have the options to go back to Tim Patrick or Kendrick Bourne. Snead is also brought in to mentor our younger guys. The tight end room is pretty much the same, I just added Logan Thomas for mentorship. Offensive line isn't much of a change. I will start the rookie Carlos Williams over Ben Powers at left guard to start the season. I just feel like Williams could be a very good player. And we also brought in a mentor for the offensive line as well. Our defensive line will be led by Glenn Ramsey and Zach Allen, and they'll be mentored by the veteran Chandler Jones, with Big Michael Pierce as well at nose tackle. Edge rushers should be exciting for us this year with our new signings and drafted players that we brought in. And we'll certainly need a rotation for these guys to get a good amount of playing time. Our off-ball linebackers also have some more depth now, and we'll look to continue developing our younger players. Our corners will definitely be a challenge for us this year, but this could be a good moment for Damari Mathis or Riley Moss to step up. And they have Nickel Roby-Coleman to go and mentor them now in this group. And the safeties are a young group led out by our rookie Carl Barrington, and a chance for all these guys to show us what they can do. And of course, we also signed a young kicker in Seth Cunningham, and Riley Dixon will be our punter this year. I can't wait to see them get out there and begin the journey of our rebuild and changing this franchise to become a Super Bowl contender again. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this episode. This was a fun and long one, but well worth it. Next episode, we'll kick off with Week 1 against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm Monkey C, and I'm out.